I gave up everything. My job, my savings, my peace of mind, because my husband told me he was dying. I thought I was standing by the man I loved during his final days. But then I saw a photo of him on a beach, smiling with another woman. Turns out the only thing terminal was his loyalty. So I gave him one final treatment he never saw coming. I still remember the way he said it. His voice trembled, his eyes welled up with tears, and he held my hand so tightly I thought he might never let go. "Anna, the doctor says it's cancer. Stage 4. The world around me went quiet. My ears were ringing. I couldn't even cry. I just stared at him, trying to process what he had just said. My husband, Marcus, the man I had spent the last 8 years of my life with, the man who still made me laugh on bad days, was dying. He handed me a thick envelope, scan results, doctor's notes, blood test results. Everything looked official. Everything looked real. I didn't want to tell you until I was sure, he whispered, his voice cracking. "I'm going to fight it, but the odds aren't great." I threw my arms around him and sobbed into his shoulder, to his. At that moment, nothing else mattered. Not work, not bills, not our occasional fights over his weird secrecy with money. My husband was dying. I had to be there for him. The next few days were a blur of emotions. Fear reef, panic. I barely slept. He started talking about needing money for experimental treatment, not covered by insurance. I didn't even question it. I just opened our savings account and handed over what we had. Then came the decision that changed everything. I quit my job. My boss thought I was crazy, leaving a management position I'd worked years to earn. But I couldn't focus at work while Marcus was at home fighting for his life. I told myself I'd get another job later. Right now, I needed to be his caregiver, his rock. It wasn't just about the money. I cooked all his meals, drove him to every supposed appointment, waited hours in parking lots while he claimed to be in chemo. He always came out looking tired, drawn, so I believed him. He played the part perfectly. Looking back, there were signs. There were never any hospital wristbands. No follow-up calls from doctors. No bills from treatment centers. He told me everything was handled under a special trial program that required total confidentiality. I believed him, because why would the man I love lie about something like this? And then came the weirdest part. About 2 months into this battle, he started acting happier. His color came back, he started eating better, even gained weight. When I asked if the treatment was working, he just said, "Maybe I'm lucky. Maybe I've got more time than we thought." We celebrated that night. I remember thinking, maybe this nightmare is ending. God, I wish that had been true. Because 2 weeks later, my friend texted me a photo. She didn't even say anything, just a single image. Marcus, standing on a beach in Cabo, grinning like a fool, arm around a tall brunette in a bikini. I zoomed in to be sure. It was him, my terminally ill husband, on vacation with another woman. My stomach turned. My hands went numb. I wanted to believe it was old, a misunderstanding. Maybe it was photoshopped. But the date tag, it was yesterday. He'd told me he was at the hospital that day. Said he'd be there all afternoon. I even packed him a special lunch. I sat on the floor of our bedroom with that photo in my hand, and something inside me snapped. This wasn't just betrayal. This was evil. And I knew right then I had to find out how deep the lies went. I stared at that photo for what felt like hours. Marcus. Smiling. Tan. Carefree. And not a trace of the pain, exhaustion, or despair he'd shown me just days earlier. The man in the photo looked alive in every sense of the word. Not someone dying from stage 4 cancer. Not someone receiving weekly chemotherapy. I couldn't feel my legs. My head was spinning. Had I really been that blind? I had given up my career, emptied my savings, and watched this man cry in my arms. I had spoon-fed him soup, held his hair back when he vomited and rubbed his back through the nights. He claimed he couldn't sleep from the pain, but there he was in Cabo with another woman's hands on his chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But most of all, I wanted answers. The next morning, I waited until he left the house for what he said was a follow-up consultation. I followed him. I stayed 2 cars behind, trying to keep calm. He didn't go to any hospital, no clinic, no cancer center. He pulled into a coffee shop. 10 minutes later, a woman joined him. Same one from the photo. She kissed him like they'd done it 100 times before. That's when the denial inside me shattered into pieces. He wasn't sick. He wasn't fighting for his life. He was just lying. I needed proof. I drove straight to the hospital he had claimed to be getting treatment, from the one he said was managing his experimental therapy. And I walked in heart racing and asked for records under his name. I had my marriage certificate ID, everything. The receptionist looked at me with a mix of confusion and concern. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "We have no patient by that name. Are you sure you've got the right location?" I nodded numbly. "Yes." He told me he's been getting chemotherapy here every week for 3 months. She called over a supervisor who checked again. Still nothing. Not a single record. Not a single appointment. Not a single treatment. That was the moment I knew it was all fake. The diagnosis, the papers, the late-night sob stories, everything. He had created this elaborate lie just to get my money and keep me distracted. But why? Why go so far? Why fake cancer? And then I remembered the way he always insisted I be the one to withdraw the money. He never wanted anything in writing. No transfers. No bank trail. It was always cash. Because he wanted no evidence. He wanted me to be the one holding the empty bag. I drove home in a daze. He got there before me, texting that he was exhausted from treatment and was lying down. I didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I started gathering everything. Screenshots, bank statements, that beach photo. I even called my friend, who had taken it, and asked her to send me the original unedited version with timestamp. Then I made an appointment with a therapist. I trusted someone I had seen years ago when my father passed. I told her everything. And I asked one question. If someone lies about having cancer, manipulates a loved one for money, isolates them, and cheats while doing it, is that just cruel, or is it something more? She didn't hesitate. It's pathological, possibly narcissistic personality disorder. At minimum, it's emotional and financial abuse. That gave me the push I needed. I wasn't just angry, I was done. But I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to cry. I wanted him to pay. So I came up with a plan. I waited a week pretending like everything was normal. I cooked him dinner. I rubbed his shoulders. I even told him, "You look like you're getting better." He smiled and said, "Maybe I'll beat this after all." You beat something you never had, I thought. Then one night I told him I'd found a specialist who offered a miracle treatment, a holistic cancer center that claimed to have helped other terminal patients. He played along like he was skeptical, but I could see the glint in his eye. Money. More money. Another chance to scam me. I told him I'd already made the appointment. "I'll drive you," I said with a soft smile. "You don't have to," he replied. "I want to," I said. "You shouldn't be alone for this." The place I drove him to wasn't a hospital. It was a private behavioral health facility, a rehab and psychiatric center, known for helping people with compulsive lying, narcissistic behaviors, and pathological manipulation. I'd already spoken to the intake counselor, sent all the evidence, and made the payment. Yes, it cost money, but at this point, I was more than willing to invest in sanity. When we got there, he looked confused. "This doesn't look like a cancer center," I smiled. "It's not." 2 staff members stepped forward. "Marcus," one of them asked. He nodded slowly. "You've been checked in for voluntary observation and treatment. This is a secure facility." His eyes widened in panic. "Wait. What is this, Anna? What the hell is this?" I didn't answer. I handed him a manila envelope. Inside were all the papers he had forged the beach photo, and a note from me that read, "You faked cancer. You faked love. But now it's time to face something real." They escorted him inside, and for the first time in months, I drove home and actually felt peace. The house was quiet after I dropped Marcus off at the psychiatric rehab center. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could hear myself think, but peace doesn't come immediately after betrayal, not when you've lived in a web of lies so thick it suffocates you. I knew there was more. Something in my gut told me Marcus's fake cancer was only the surface. So, I decided to dig. I started with his laptop. I'd never snooped before I believed in privacy. But trust has an expiration date, and his ran out the moment he faked terminal illness to steal from me. He was lazy about passwords. I guessed it on the 3rd try, our dog's name followed by his birth year. The first thing I found was a folder labeled work, but Marcus hadn't had a real job in over 6 months. Inside the folder, nothing but spreadsheets, budgets, travel plans, and lists of client gifts, totaling thousands of dollars. One of them was a receipt for a diamond necklace shipped to an unfamiliar address. Then I found the emails. Dozens of them. Some from fake aliases. Some from a woman named Celia. One thread started with "Baby, I told her I had cancer." She bought it. Can't believe it was that easy. My stomach twisted. So this wasn't a one-time slip or some desperate lie. It was a coordinated manipulation. He was proud of it. Another message read, "She just gave me another $3,000 for treatment and told her the insurance denied a scan." LMAO. We're so close to the goal. Mexico soon. Mexico. The beach. The photo. So Celia wasn't just a fling. She was in on it. I felt like I couldn't breathe. But I wasn't done. I started combing through his browser history. More hidden gems instructions on faking medical documents, Photoshop templates for blood test results, and shockingly, a YouTube video titled How to Fake Illness for Sympathy That Actually Works. I clicked play just to see what kind of twisted content this was. It was a man explaining step by step how to act sick, what symptoms to fake, how to use props, like saline drips, and even how to cry on command. Marcus had done all of it. This wasn't just manipulation. It was practically a masterclass in con artistry. But the worst part came next. I checked our joint bank account, empty, as expected. But I remembered that Marcus had received a birthday card from his uncle in Nevada a few months ago, with an unfamiliar bank name printed on the envelope. I called that bank pretending to be Marcus's assistant, and after being transferred and put on hold 3 times, I finally got someone who confirmed yes, there was a personal account under his name. I drove to the nearest branch and requested a statement using our marriage certificate. The manager hesitated at first, but finally relented. The account had over $38,000 in it. Withdrawals were frequent. Flights, jewelry, hotel stays. But the deposits, they matched the amounts I had been giving him for treatments. Every single one. He hadn't spent my money on doctors or medicine. He'd hidden it in a secret account and spent it on luxury weekends and gifts for Celia. I stood in that bank lobby frozen, staring at the transaction list, like it was some kind of nightmare I hadn't woken up from. He stole from me, lied to me, played sick in my arms, and worst of all, he had help. I walked out of the bank and called a lawyer. It was time to make it official. Over the next few days, I began the process of filing for divorce. I also submitted a financial fraud report. Thanks to the bank records and digital evidence, the case was strong. My lawyer was stunned by the scope of the deception. He faked cancer and opened a secret account using your money, yep. I replied, and the girlfriend helped. Seems like it. He shook his head. This is sociopathic. You'll absolutely have a case for financial restitution and maybe even emotional damages. But while the legal process was moving forward, I had one more thing to do. I needed to see Celia. I found her on Instagram easily. Marcus had liked nearly every photo of her in a bikini. Her profile was public. She was an aspiring fitness influencer, with captions like manifesting my best life and loyalty is everything. The irony made me sick. I sent her a message. Hey, Celia. Just wanted you to know that Marcus isn't in Cabo anymore. He's in a psychiatric facility. I dropped him off myself. I attached a screenshot of the intake confirmation and ended with, also, I'm his wife. Thought you should know. She blocked me within the hour. Coward. A few weeks later, Marcus was released from the rehab center. He didn't come home. He knew better. Instead, he sent me a single text. You tricked me. I trusted you. I stared at the message, stunned at the audacity. I replied, You faked dying. I gave you my life. Go to hell. I never heard from him again. The divorce was finalized in 3 months. Thanks to the evidence, the judge granted me full access to the hidden bank account restitution for what I lost, and a restraining order. Marcus didn't even contest it. I think deep down he knew he was beaten. It's been nearly a year since then. I've started rebuilding my life. I went back to work, started therapy, and even got a new apartment one where no memory of Marcus could follow me. Sometimes I still wonder how I missed the signs. How someone could hold your hand, cry on your shoulder, and pretend to be dying. All while secretly planning your betrayal. But I've stopped blaming myself. Because when someone fakes something as sacred as cancer, just to steal your love, your money, and your life that's not on you, that's on them. And while Marcus may be out there trying to charm someone new with his lies, I know one thing for sure. He'll never be able to fake his way out of what he's become. I thought I was done with Marcus. The divorce was finalized. The money he stole had been mostly recovered. I'd blocked him on everything, changed my number, and even moved to a new apartment across town. But closure isn't always a clean break. Sometimes it circles back to test you. It happened one Sunday morning. I was sipping coffee in my kitchen, finally enjoying the silence of my new life, when I received a message request on my Instagram account from someone named Leah. At first, I didn't recognize the name, but the profile photo stopped me cold. There he was, Marcus, in another woman's selfie, arms around her waist, smiling like he had never been caught faking cancer and stealing thousands from the last woman he claimed to love. I clicked the message. Hi. I hope this isn't weird, but I really need to talk to you. I think we've both been involved with the same man. Marcus. Please, it's important. My first instinct was to block her. I didn't want to go down that road again. But something in her tone sounded desperate, Ed. Honest, even scared. So, I replied, Hi, Leah. Yes, I know Marcus. What happened? What followed shook me. Leah told me that she met Marcus on a dating app about 4 months after our divorce. He told her he was a cancer survivor, that his ex-wife, me, had abandoned him during treatment and took all his money in the divorce. He spun the story like a soap opera. She was cold. She never believed in his illness. He barely survived thanks to miracle clinics and sheer willpower. Now he was trying to start fresh with someone who truly cared. And Leah, who had lost her mother to ovarian cancer just a year before, fell for it hard. She told me he cried when he talked about chemo, showed her old photos of him looking gaunt and pale, which I now knew were edited or faked. He said he had lingering side effects and needed help with medication costs. Yes, you guessed it. He was asking her for money. Not a lot at first. Just a few hundred here and there for prescriptions. Then more. For a follow-up scan. For out-of-pocket labs. For alternative therapies. Always in cash. Always urgent. And she gave it. Because she loved him. Because she believed him. I felt like I was looking in a mirror. Then she said something that made me sit up straight. He mentioned your name once. Said you were vindictive. That you faked evidence against him and got him put into a psych facility just because you were bitter. He left you. I almost laughed. Vindictive. I gave up my career, my money, my sanity, for a man who faked dying in my arms. But Leah wasn't stupid. She had doubts. She started noticing little things. Inconsistencies in his medical stories, missing receipts, changes in how he described treatments. She had Googled him and found nothing, no mention of cancer, no public donations, nothing. Not even a record of treatment in local clinics. And then she found me. I took a deep breath and asked her, "How much has he taken from you?" She hesitated. "Around $8,000. I feel like an idiot." She wasn't. I told her that. Marcus had a script. He knew how to pick women with empathy, with emotional trauma, with open hearts. That was his power. But I also knew he had a pattern, and that meant he was beatable. So I offered her something unexpected. "Would you be willing to help me expose him?" We made a plan. I still had screenshots, email trails, photos, voice memos, bank statements. And now, with Leah's records and texts from Marcus, we had more than enough to prove that his con wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a pattern, a predatory cycle. I consulted my lawyer again, who said we could build a civil case, maybe even get local authorities interested if we had one more thing: a recorded confession. Leah was nervous but brave. She agreed to meet Marcus at a cafe and record their conversation using her phone in her purse. We spent hours prepping her. I coached her on what to say, what to ask. Questions that would nudge him to admit the lie, without realizing he was being set up. She met him the following Friday. I waited in my car a few blocks away, hands shaking. The entire time I watched the minutes tick by on the clock. After an hour, I got a text. Got it. She sent me the audio file. I'll never forget hearing his voice again. I mean, yeah, I might have exaggerated a few things, but it's not like I lied. I really thought I had cancer at one point. And Anna, she wanted to believe it. She practically fed me the story. Women love to feel needed. Then he chuckled. "Besides, if they're dumb enough to give you money, is that really my fault?" That was it. That was everything. We submitted the audio screenshots and statements to a legal team specializing in fraud and emotional abuse. Then we filed a joint complaint. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Marcus had been arrested, charged with fraud, coercion, and financial exploitation. Not only from me and Leah, but from 2 other women who had come forward after seeing our anonymous case summary online. I didn't go to the hearing. I didn't need to. Leah testified, and when she did, she read a statement I'd written. He faked a terminal illness, manipulated our grief, and stole our trust. What he took from us wasn't just money, it was dignity. But we're taking it back. Marcus pled guilty to avoid a full trial. He was sentenced to 4 years probation, ordered to pay full restitution, and placed on the state's emotional abuse watch list. He's barred from opening any joint financial accounts, soliciting funds from partners, or practicing deception in online relationships, or he goes to jail. It's not a long sentence. But for a man like him, someone who thrives on lies, it's a cage. Leah and I still talk. We check in on each other, share updates, and sometimes joke about starting a podcast called I Dated a Liar. We laugh now, but there are still scars. Not all con men wear masks. Some wear wedding rings. Some sleep beside you and hold your hand while pretending to die. But I've learned something. The truth always catches up to them. And women like us, we rise. It had been almost 6 months since Marcus's sentencing. Life had started to feel normal again. Leah and I still stayed in touch. We even joined a local support group for survivors of romantic fraud. Talking to others who'd gone through similar pain made us feel less alone and a little stronger every time we shared our story. I thought the nightmare was finally behind me. But Marcus wasn't finished. It started with an email, an anonymous account. No name in the sender line. Just, "I'm sorry. I didn't know how else to reach you." I stared at the screen. My heart did that awful flutter, equal parts fear and disgust. He went on, "I've been doing therapy. Real therapy. The court-mandated sessions have opened my eyes. I know I hurt you more than I can even imagine. I faked something unforgivable, and I took advantage of your heart. You didn't deserve any of it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that you changed me, that losing you and everything I had was the wake-up call I needed. I'm sorry, Anna. I really truly am." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I did something unexpected. I replied, "Marcus, I don't know if this message is part of a new game or not, but I'll say this. I'm not the same person you lied to. That woman died the day she watched the man she loved fake terminal illness to steal from her. I hope you are getting better, but your healing is your responsibility, not mine. Don't contact me again." I clicked send, and then I blocked the account. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't wonder if he'd changed. I just felt still, calm, detached. That's when I realized something. I had finally taken my power back. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak at a local women's advocacy event, one focused on emotional and financial abuse. At first, I hesitated. What would I even say? But when I stood in front of that small group of women, some older, some younger, some still trembling from their own fresh wounds, I knew why I had to be there. I told them everything, about how Marcus faked cancer, how I gave up my job to care for him, how I found the photo of him on the beach with his mistress, how I uncovered the bank account, and how I turned the pain into a case that helped put him on a national fraud watch list. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one woman in the back stood up and said, "You just told my story. Thank you for helping me feel seen." I smiled. That's when the tears came. After that event, something shifted in me. I realized that what I went through, horrible as it was, had given me something I never expected, a voice, and I was going to use it. I started writing articles, giving talks, and volunteering with a nonprofit that helps victims of romantic scams and emotional abuse. Leah even joined me for one of the workshops. Together, we weren't just survivors anymore. We were advocates. Then one day, I got a call from a woman named Sophie, who worked at a national fraud prevention network. She'd heard about my story through one of my blog posts and asked if I'd be interested in helping train counselors to spot emotional manipulation early, especially in domestic abuse cases. I said yes, because if I could help one person avoid falling into the same trap Marcus set for me, then maybe everything I went through meant something. Sometimes people ask me if I still miss Marcus. That's a complicated question. I don't miss him, the liar, the manipulator, the thief. But I do mourn the idea of who I thought he was. That man, the one who held my hand during fake chemo appointments, who told me I was his whole world, never existed. And grieving a person who wasn't real is one of the strangest forms of heartbreak I've ever known. But I've made peace with it, because now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone stronger, someone who didn't just survive betrayal. She dismantled it. Marcus never tried to contact me again after that email. Last I heard, he'd moved out of state. Maybe he's rebuilding. Maybe he's repeating the cycle. That's not my business anymore. What is my business? Is healing, growing, helping others avoid what I lived through, and loving myself again. Because for a long time I thought I was broken, that something in me was flawed to have let someone fool me so completely. But I know now that's not true. The problem was never me. It was the man who chose deception over honesty, manipulation over love. And I will never let someone like that near my heart again. Looking back, I never could have imagined that the man I once trusted with my heart would turn out to be the source of my deepest betrayal. He didn't just lie. He created an entire world of fiction with himself as the suffering hero, and me as the willing caretaker. He weaponized my compassion, stole my savings, and almost broke my spirit. Almost. But the truth, I came out stronger. I found my courage the moment I stopped protecting his lies and started believing in my own worth. I uncovered the fraud, exposed the manipulator, and connected with other women who'd also been deceived. Together, we built something far more powerful than revenge. We built awareness. Because these stories aren't just mine. They're everywhere. Hidden in quiet marriages, whispered behind closed doors, and too often suffered in silence. That's why I chose to speak out, to tell my story not out of bitterness, but out of purpose. If even one person watching this recognizes a red flag, questions a too-good-to-be-true love story, or finds the strength to walk away from manipulation, then all of this has meaning. And if you've lived through something like this, I see you, I believe you, and I promise it gets better. Thank you for following my journey. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to Family Story, My Husband, for more real-life stories of strength, betrayal, and the road to healing. Your support helps amplify voices that need to be heard.